We begin the day with the choice facing U.S. President Donald Trump. Fight or talk? Trump says he has not yet decided on whether to join Israel in its strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Now he has given the world a time frame for his decision: within the next 2 weeks. He says he wants to give negotiations on a nuclear deal with Tehran a chance, but those negotiations seem to be going nowhere. The president claims the Iranians have offered to come to the White House to talk, but they deny that and say they'll only negotiate if Israel stops its bombing campaign. Vladimir Putin thinks he can bring Israel and Iran to the negotiating table. Russia and Iran are close, and Tehran has supplied crucial weapons for the war in Ukraine. At the same time, the Kremlin is striving for good relations with Israel, part of its delicate balancing act in the Middle East. But the U.S. president was dismissive of Putin's offer to mediate, saying, "Sort out your own problems first."
I said, do me a favor. Mediate your own. Let's mediate Russia first, okay? I said, Vladimir, let's mediate Russia first. You can worry about this later.
And we can now speak to Anna Borshchevskaya. She's a senior fellow at the Washington Institute, where she focuses on Russia's policy towards the Middle East. Anna, welcome to the show. Now, Trump there reminding Putin of his own war, but just give us a sense of how pleased Putin is right now to see the world distracted by what's happening between Israel and Iran.
Well, I think Putin is watching these events with a lot of caution. I don't think he wants to see a major conflict break out to the extent that it necessitates Russia diverting more resources to it than it needs to. But at the same time, I think he's looking to leverage this crisis to his own advantage. And that is what his offer to mediate is precisely about.
We'll get to that offer of mediation in a second, but first I want to look at what all of this means for Ukraine. We saw it at the G7. Hardly anyone was really concerned with the war in Ukraine. Donald Trump didn't stay to meet Volodymyr Zelensky. How frustrating is all of this for Ukraine? Still very much fighting for its survival.
It is frustrating, and I think Zelensky's comments shortly after the Israeli strikes on Iran were quite telling. He highlighted that a rise in oil prices could benefit Russia. He raised concerns about weapons being diverted from Ukraine to the Middle East. And certainly, and again, this goes to your earlier question, is Vladimir Putin pleased? So I think these are valid concerns. And of course, Putin continues attacking Ukraine. That has not changed.
How dangerous is all of this for Ukraine?
Well, I think and there's two parts here. As far as weapons deliveries or any kind of military assistance to Ukraine, as far as I know, there has been no change. But if there is a rise in oil prices, and interestingly, thus far, it hasn't quite played out as expected. There was a brief spike of about 7% for several days, and then prices went down. But if there is a serious spike in oil prices, that would be of benefit to Russia for sure, because that is how Russia funds its war on Ukraine. And Ukrainians, I think, have reasons to be concerned that Middle East could potentially divert attention away from Ukraine. Secondly, again, Putin's offered to mediate. If Putin is given that opportunity, and by the way, right now there's lots of skepticism about that, but if Putin is given that opportunity, that would certainly be bad for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at the downsides for Moscow before we look at that offer of mediation. Iran has been supplying weapons, most famously, of course, the Shahed drones to Russia. Now one would presume that Iran is going to keep all its weapons where it can see and use them. Is that going to affect Russia on the battlefield in Ukraine at all?
So that I think is unlikely to affect Russia in any negative way, in any serious way, because the fact of the matter is Russia has long since reverse engineered these drones, and they found alternative supply chains. It is true that Iran has done a lot to enable Russia's war. But Russia resented this dependence on Iran. This was quite unusual for Russia. Russia wants others to be dependent on it. And that's why they've taken steps to move away from that dependence. So I think as far as drones, Russia has little to worry about.
Earlier this year, Russia signed a comprehensive strategic partnership with Iran. Could that put Russia in an awkward position of maybe having to assist Iran militarily?
Not nearly as much as many have suggested, because if you look at the language of the strategic partnership, it does not obligate Russia to come to Iran's aid. There's nothing that explicitly states the two countries have to assist each other militarily. And in fact, Putin actually said as much just the other day. The other issue is that Iran did not ask Russia for assistance. So there is a strategic partnership, and make no mistake, by the way, Russia and Iran have a close partnership, and that is very important in terms of Putin's global ambitions and calculations. But Russia at this stage is not required to come to Iran's rescue.
What about if the Iranian regime gets toppled? Russia already lost an ally in the Middle East in the form of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. What would the loss of its most important ally in the region mean?
Well, I think that is the one scenario that Putin fears. I think, and when you asked earlier, how is Putin looking at this, this scenario unfolding? I do think that that is the one thing that would deal an important strategic blow to him, far more so, frankly, than the fall of Assad. A regime change in Tehran would be very bad for in terms of Russia's overall strategic calculus in the Middle East and globally. And I think that, again, I think that's why he's watching these events with a great degree of caution.
And that's presumably why he wants to mediate. But can Moscow really be considered a serious peace broker in this conflict, its own war of aggression aside?
No, no, Moscow cannot be considered a neutral mediator in this conflict. Frankly, if Ukraine aside, the fact of the matter is, on the one hand, Putin has positioned himself in the region as somebody who could talk to all sides. He played this game of peacemaker and peace broker. But the fact of the matter is, he has always leaned closer to anti-Western forces in the region, and that is Iran, its proxies, and until recently, the Assad regime. The fact of the matter is, Putin has done a lot to empower Iran and its proxies. So he is by no means neutral. The two of them have been aligned on a bigger strategic vision, and that is the reduction of American influence in the Middle East, and frankly, a degree of chaos in the region to the extent that it benefits these parties.
To what extent do you think Iran really trusts Moscow here? Because when the rebels in Syria were moving on Damascus, he did not lift a finger to come to Bashar al-Assad's defense. So could that be a scenario that we see play out again? Or do they think that really, if push comes to shove, Vladimir Putin is someone that they could ask for help?
Well, there have been some rumors, some unconfirmed rumors of family members of the regime fleeing to Moscow. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we simply don't know about at this stage. But it is, it is striking that the Iranian regime, as of now, has not asked Russia for help. The example earlier that you're referring to with Assad, it's true that Putin appears to have made a quick decision to let Assad fall, but he did give him refuge in Moscow, which he didn't have to do. This scenario, what you're describing, has the potential of, again, playing out on a much bigger scale, where if there is a potential of a regime change, again, as I said earlier, I think that's the one thing that Putin fears the most, because that would be damaging to his position in the region. So here, I think that opens a lot of questions.
In real terms, and maybe looking at the time also to wrap up, what do you expect to be the short-term consequences for Ukraine in all of this?
I think I think if again any kind of attention taken away from the from Ukraine and any kind of opportunities that Russia uses to raise additional revenue for the war. Already the fact that there is no discussion of peace talks, I imagine is worrying for Zelensky. But having said that, remember, Russia does not want peace. Russia is not looking for peace in Ukraine. That's why any of these discussions that we've seen are not serious, because Russia is not interested in peace. Russia believes that it can win this war. So I think, again, diverting attention away from Ukraine at this stage would be bad for Ukraine.
That was Anna Borshchevskaya of the Washington Institute. Many thanks. Great speaking to you today.
Thanks for having me.